You're listening to the Black Eagles podcast with Sinan Schwarting and Kaan and Sinan.
Ahmet Dursun Sergen aldı. Sergen Bülent yan yana. Sergen Bülent. Sergen. Orada Tümer var. Tümer'e doğru aksiyon kaybetti. Tümer topu aldı. Sergen aldı. Gol! Gol! Gol! Sergen attı. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi.
İbrahim'in pası. Roma. Şimdi Ahmet. İkinci gole gidiyor Beşiktaş. Ahmet.
Welcome back, everyone. Episode 26 of the Black Eagles podcast. Here today, Sinan Schwarting, live from New York, as always, and my co-host, Kaan and Sinan. And of course, today, as you've been informed, it's a special day here on the podcast. We've got our first recurring guest, Sonja Nikcevic. Everyone, round of applause. So Kaan, why don't you say a couple words to introduce yourself to the episode, and then we'll just jump right into it, Sonja.
Well, I want to just start off and lead off with saying that I'm going to have to be careful here, or Sinan will be replacing me with Sonja soon.
That's right.
We got some great feedback on episode 20, where she, of course, joined us to talk about Partizan Belgrade. Sonja, of course, with her background as a Serbian journalist, she was at the World Cup, covering following the Serbian national team for FIFA Digital, I believe, as an AIPS journalist. And she, of course, followed the national team there. She was with the national team. She's a Partizan fan, the club where Adem Ljajić went through his youth education. He played there for 2 full seasons, I believe. And she lives in Italy, where he spent basically the last 6 to 7 years of his career. So, who better to talk to than Sonja?
That's right. But so yeah, it's great to have Sonja back. Sonja, do you want to say hi to the group? You've already introduced yourself once.
And I am happy to do it again. So first I want to say that it's really great to be on the show, and it's a super big honor, not just to be invited back on, but to be the first person to ever have been invited back on. So I'm glad that you guys decided that my ramblings ahead of Partizan Beşiktaş were worth the second call up. So it's great to be here, and to talk about another very, very colorful character in the Serbian team, and now in the Beşiktaş team.
That's right, yeah.
So shall we get right straight into it and dig into the meat and potatoes here on the podcast?
Yeah.
Let's talk some...
I was waiting for you to say that, Kaan. Yes, let's
talk some Adem Ljajić. So Sinan, would you like to start off the interview?
Yes, by all means. So I of course, all of our followers will know that the pursuit of a number 10 was high intensity this offseason, high priority. We had Anderson Talisca, Brazilian player who left in the offseason under some clouds of controversy, perhaps. Well, maybe not. More about whether we'd get money for him or not. But in the end, we did get Adem Ljajić, and he is what we hope to be the perfect fit in that number 10. And so I think that's a perfect place to start our questioning of you, Sonja. Gosh, that sounds a little intense. Questioning. Get the light, Kaan. But yeah, what do you like? As far as his place on the pitch, of course, historically, I think he's alternated a little bit between the left wing and in that sort of number 10 attacking midfield role. Where is he most natural? Is he versatile? Is he truly, equally as good at either position? What are your thoughts on him positionally, Sonja?
Positionally, I think Ljajić is one of those players who feels just as comfortable in the number 10 as he does on the wings. And at the World Cup, Serbia had Milinković-Savić as the number 10 and played Ljajić, who wasn't always a starter in all 3 of Serbia's matches, but he was against Switzerland, and there he played on the left and showed that he brings a lot of creativity to Serbia's game, but I don't think it's just confined to that left side. I think that he's one of those players who kind of likes to roam around a little bit through that midfield. So I think that as a number 10, he can be good, but he can jump on the wings as well and do just as well. He doesn't have that one position where he shines more than anywhere else in midfield.
Sounds pretty ideal, honestly. Kaan, do you have any thoughts on that?
I just wanted to ask basically, what type of a creative player would you say is? Is he the man of the true ball, or someone that'll play a 1-2?
Someone who's going to be looking to take a shot whenever he can.
Is he a crosser? Is he a shooter? Just what type of creativity should we expect from him?
Well, the thing with Ljajić is that you expect the unexpected has always kind of been my thing with him, and I think that he's very good at teaming up with other players to cause kind of chaos for the other team. But he's also not been shy of actually shooting from like, let's say, an ideal shooting position in midfield. So he's kind of good at all parts of that sometimes. And that's the thing with Ljajić. He doesn't have that one specialty where you'd say, oh, he's fantastic in dead ball situations, or he's fantastic at crossing. He's good at all of that when he wants to be. And then you can see one game of Ljajić being fantastic in all of that, and then not see him do any of that in 4 or 5 games. So I think that and that's something that's very present here in the Italian media, and that's also been present through Ljajic's time in the national team. It's inconsistency in terms of sparks of brilliance, and then whether it's something that has to do with something that he gets inside his own head, or which I think is part of it. And then he just disappears and isn't there for a few games, and then almost to the point of him needing somebody to say, well, you've been pretty crap recently, and then that kind of fires him up, and then he's good again, and then he falls down again. So I feel like with Ljajić, it's always a little bit of a roller coaster, both on and off the pitch.
That's actually maybe, and of course maybe not ideal, but if there's a team where that type of a player could fit in somewhat seamlessly, I think Beşiktaş might be it. Because we have a bit of, maybe authoritarian is harsh, but Şenol Güneş, our coach, is definitely the type of guy who would let Adem know if he's flagging. So that could be to both their benefits in theory.
Yeah, I see actually that working well, because I mean, I feel like the Beşiktaş coach has managed to get the best out of some players that kind of a firm hand.
Yeah, right. And troublesome, maybe like Quaresma, right? Kind of characters.
Exactly. Quaresma was the player I was thinking about. I also think the whole situation with Pepe at the club is also really interesting, because he's also a character. And I think that Ljajić actually might prosper in those kind of surroundings. And especially because, as far as I know, Beşiktaş also have another former Torino player in their ranks at the moment, and I think that he's going to do well in having a bit of, but then also something completely new for him in a time where he wasn't having, let's say, first team, where he wasn't playing in the first team in Torino. And I think that he'll be eager to prove that he can in Beşiktaş.
Yeah, by all means. And I think another reason he's a good fit is that Beşiktaş is a team that's very wing heavy. We've got Babel, Quaresma, Jermaine Lens, Gökhan Töre, another guy who's been around the block. But so the main sort of need for the team in pursuing number 10 is having that kind of option not to bring it off the wing, because there's so much strength there. It's become quite predictable for opposing defenses. So I think, Ljajić isn't someone who'd have to necessarily be at his top every play, but just having someone in there who can offer something different, even just the threat of something different, could be really effective for Beşiktaş. So I think Ljajić, even on an off day, just his figure being there will be enough to contribute quite a bit. And when he does feel like playing well, great. You know?
Yeah, I think so. I think that what's good with Ljajić is that he kind of often he feeds off of the energy of other players and even off like the creativity. He brings the creativity, but he also feeds off the creativity and the explosiveness of other players. So I think that if Beşiktaş is winger heavy in that sense, wing heavy, he'll look at that in a positive light of having somebody to kind of 1-2 with. Yeah. And that's where I see. So Ljajić is very good at causing chaos in the defense of the opponent, obviously, because like he's quick. Mm-hmm. He's quick, and I think he thinks fast as well. He thinks quickly and he moves quickly. Mm-hmm. And so like he can easily kind of, with a quick 1-2 from either of the wings, he can kind of sneak his way through the midfield and actually put himself in a shooting position or an assist position. Right. So I think there's room there. And also what I think might not be bad is giving Ljajić responsibility. I think that since his debut at Partizan, Ljajić, where obviously he spent 2 years there and showed early on that he was kind of a cut above the rest in terms of creativity and style. And he was kind of given a little bit of that leader role at Partizan. And that's where I still think he showed some of his best performances consistently. And I mean, I've seen games of Ljajić playing really, really well at Roma. I've seen couple of his fantastic matches at Fiorentina early on as well, less so afterwards in Torino, where he would like be good and then be bad and then be bad again and then be even worse and then be good again. And but consistency wise, I think he showed some of his best in the early parts of his career at Partizan, not just because, let's say, the league is at a much lower level than obviously Serie A is.
Right, most are.
Yeah. But also because I feel like Ljajić was given trust and to kind of take on a leadership role. He was given, and this was a big thing during his time at Partizan, he was given the number 22 shirt, which was worn by club legend Schlewitz, who left the club to go to Beşiktaş rivals, Galatasaray.
I was going to say, yeah.
And yeah, sorry for mentioning that.
No, by all means. No, it's good stuff.
It will be bleeped, don't worry.
Yeah, we'll bleep out all curse words, right?
So basically, Schlewitz went to Turkey to try and kind of establish his international career, which never kind of left off. He's one of those one club players who needs the security of his surroundings to be influential, and he is a club legend. And when he left, it was a question of what's going to happen to the 22, and it was given to Ljajić. And I feel like it was one of those situations where, in let's say a school environment, the teacher gives kind of the troublesome kid, gives him responsibility, and then the player kind of grows, or the student grows into that responsibility. And I feel like that's what happened with Ljajić in Partizan, and nobody really gave him that trust afterwards, neither in the national team, where he's never really been consistent, and nor neither in any of the Serie A clubs where he's played. And so I think that if Beşiktaş see him as the ideal kind of commander of that midfield in the number 10 position, he might actually really flourish in being given the chance to lead.
I was told by someone, by the way, that 22 is his favorite number, and I can't for the life of me remember why, but it's the number of his favorite player, but I can't remember the player's name.
It's Illich who we're just reading. But I mean, it should be noted that he has chosen 22 with Beşiktaş, which I'm actually very fortunate about, because my mother was just in Turkey, and I had just mentioned, if you're going to get me something, you could get me a Ljajić jersey. So she did, but his number hadn't been announced yet. So the guy in the store just picked 22 because it was his national team number. And so I'm really lucky and pleased that worked out.
That is very lucky.
Yeah, no, there you go. So I don't know if that might be Sonja Nikcevic and him getting that 22.
No, it was
or it
was
earlier.
It was a more famous name, but it's eluding me. Who's a famous number 22? I can't
Can't
really
think of a single one.
I can't really think of one either. It's probably somewhere in my mentions, but if I have to go through all of that,
Maybe we could do it in post.
but yeah, I mean, you spoke about Partizan already. May have also had to do.
Was that you, Kaan?
No, not me.
Oh,
That was
on
me,
my end?
sorry.
Oh, that's
That was on my end.
Yeah, no worries,
Sorry.
no worries.
It's the trash collectors in
It's no
Italy.
problem. We can edit it out. So
Yeah,
just-
Today,
I'm
today
usually
is
the one.
bottles and cans day, so
No worries, no worries. I actually thought it was on my end because usually I got like the New York sirens in the background. Sorry, Kaan,
sorry, that was me. That was bottles and cans.
No worries.
So you already talked about his early career at Partizan and how that was probably one of his most consistent periods in his career. Do you think that was maybe also in part because of his trial with Man United, and there was actually a deal in place, I believe, to buy him for £16.5 million, I believe, but they sent him back to Partizan and then to further evaluate him. Do you think that might have been a motivating factor in his consistency at Partizan that he showed there?
Yeah, I think it might have, but to be completely honest, I think his most consistent matches came before that Partizan call-up. Before that Man United call-up. It felt like almost, as I think it would be normal, is that when a big club comes calling and you get that trial and afterwards you know they're watching, there's a bit of jitters and there's a bit of nerves there. But still, he was very good. He kind of showed, like I said, that spark of creativity and talent above all that really kind of spurred Partizan to do well, and kind of showed that he, I don't know if deserved is a good word, but should be playing outside of Serbia, and that he had a lot to contribute to either United or any other club. And in the end, that kind of transfer to Man United fell through. And I think that was a big hit for him. That was a big blow. And there were lots of rumors circulating in terms of why that never kind of came through. And at first it was announced that both him and Zoran Tosic would be leaving Partizan and signing for Man United. And then Tosic signed right away to kind of continue his development directly at the club, while Ljajić would continue to develop locally before kind of heading over to Manchester. And then in 2010, when he was supposed to join Manchester United, that it was found out that deal fell through, and there were a number of kind of questions of why did that happen. I think initial reports were that it was about kind of the club failing to obtain a work permit for Ljajić, and then afterwards it came out that it was a thing of cash, and that kind of it was that United had been given a restricted budget, that kind of like the plug was pulled on cash that they had to spend that year. And then the official reason that Manchester United gave at the time was that a number of new academy players had come through in midfield, and that they were already midfield heavy, and that Ljajić wasn't what they needed at that time, which kind of does sound like code for we don't have the money to spend more on midfield, so we're putting some of our academy players through. And then what came out is that Partizan's sporting director was kind of asked about Ljajić's state of mind after almost signing for one of the biggest clubs in the world and then not. Especially because that was still in the Ferguson era, and like we talked about a little off air. I mean, the fact that Alex Ferguson wants, first of all, to give you a trial and then to sign you is a huge thing. And this was in 2009, where like United was still in its glory days, let's say, and when playing for a United midfield was basically a dream come true. It was, I mean, when you say that I'm going to play in the position or in the role that was once taken by Paul Scholes or Ryan Giggs or even David Beckham, or it's just like it's enough to make your head spin. And then when something like that falls through for whatever reason, and I mean, one of those things going through your head is, am I not good enough? Was I almost good enough? Or is it something that's not connected to me at all? Like it's enough to make your head spin. And I remember the Partizan sporting director at the time saying, well, Ljajić is handling it, but he's not handling it terribly well in terms of it was a big psychological blow for him. And it's one of those things that you never really recover from to a certain extent, I'm sure. And I mean, at the time he was with the number 22, but later on he went to wear the number 8, and to think that he could have worn the number 8, Paul Scholes' former number at United, is a big thing. It's like one of those alternate universe things. Like, who knows?
Interesting. So that actually brings a question to my mind. So he and Tosic were both, maybe almost shipped to Man U. Is Tosic considered a Serbian kind of like generational talent as such? Being the guy who went to Man U and played for the biggest teams, and and in that sense, what that sort of brings to mind a kind of Cristiano Ronaldo Quaresma scenario at Sporting Lisbon, where they're both these like future stars that are pegged to do well, and then Ronaldo gets shipped to Man U and becomes Cristiano Ronaldo, and Quaresma, actually interestingly has a very similar career arc, where he goes to Italy, kind of bounces around, and then finds his footing with Beşiktaş. Quaresma is actually not a bad mold for Ljajić, and Ljajić is actually quite a bit younger than Quaresma was when he first joined too. So this could be
no. That's not true. That's not true.
He's 20. How old was Quaresma when he first joined? Wasn't he 29?
27.
27. Wow. Oh, because and then he left.
They are exactly the same age, because Quaresma is born on 26th of September, Ljajić on the 29th of September, and Quaresma came the summer that he turned 27.
That Quaresma is like 40.
Yeah, right. Because he's been around for so long. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, but they're exactly the same age, almost to the day, in terms of when they came, because Ljajić is about to turn 27 this month.
Yeah.
Wow, so perfect. Not to pat myself on the back, but yeah, that might have been a really good comp. But yeah, so is there in Serbian football a kind of sense that these guys were generational talents, and that maybe the Ljajić has not come to fruition fully, or?
Well, to be honest, I would say that Ljajić ended up having, or is having, a better career than Zoran Tosic, and I think that it was a big kind of question mark at the time why Manchester United would choose Tosic over Ljajić, who, in my opinion, was better suited for the style of play for the Premier League than Tosic ever was. And the thing with Tosic is that he was one of those light-footed, speedy players, but like accent on light-footed. He was always small and not very either big or tall in any sense. His nickname in Partizan was Bambi, basically. And would you really want somebody whose nickname is Bambi in the Premier League? Like, to me, that never made sense. And he actually, I think he had, I had to check this. As far as I remember, he never had an appearance for Man United. He did. In official stats, it says 2. But 2 appearances, and that's it, before he was sent out on loan. He was sent on loan to Germany right away, and then he signed for CSKA Moscow, where he actually made a name for himself. And now he's back at Partizan, where he's kind of still light-footed, but much older, and kind of just slower and lacking that creativity he had and potential he had as a young player. So to be honest, I think Ljajić is having a better career than Tosic in that sense, and that Tosic wasn't suited for Man United at all, and that he could have actually done better if he had stayed at Partizan and then waited for a different league to call him in.
Maybe Spain or Italy,
Maybe. I saw him at Spain, to be honest. I thought that would have been much more his style, but I don't know. Ljajić had, I think, the potential to possibly do well. Maybe not at United, just because it's a question of how much playing time and how much time they have for you to develop, to let you develop, and patience. And but I think he could have made a name for himself there. And at the time, he was actually, when the United story was still going on, Ljajić was given the nickname Little Kaká. And that was kind of coupled with the fact that Kaká was his favorite player, who he kind of considered himself close to in playing style and creativity and dribbling and all of that. And it's also kind of explains his connection to the number 22, which he took then at Partizan from Sasha Ilic, and which he then took in the national team as well.
Interesting. That's a good 6 degrees of separation thing. We should have Beşiktaş is 6 degrees of separation from Kaká, right? Because Kyle Larin played with Kaká in Orlando.
Oh, yeah, right. Sorry, I thought Toronto.
And then Quaresma, no, because he was with Inter. Okay, yeah. Anyway, but anyway, he was rivals.
But I have a follow-up on that, actually. Do you think that the gap in age that there is between Zoran Tosic and Ljajić, because I think they are like 3 or 4 years apart, do you think that initially was kind of the thinking they might have had, that we're not going to be able to give this kid too much playing time, so we're going to send him back to Partizan, and then we'll end up buying him after that? And of course, there was some slashing in Sir Alex Ferguson's budget at the time, which by many is considered the reason why the Ljajić thing didn't go through, while Zoran Tosic was already permanently transferred, so obviously they couldn't pull back on that. But maybe that's got something to do with the whole point that you made, that they wanted him, will he get enough playing time and stuff like that, and that's why they sent him back, perhaps.
I'm actually sure of it. I think that the whole reason of him spending another year in the Serbian league was to kind of give him playing time that he wouldn't get at United. And in the end, that kind of fell through. And I mean, even now, much later, 10 years later, we're witness to young Partizan players or Red Star players kind of coming through the Serbian league, signing for a big club too early, and then not getting the playing time that would have been almost a miracle that they had throughout different leagues. And there's the story of Marko Grujić, who was like a gem in Serbian football and at Red Star, who was signed by Liverpool and then sent off loan here and there, and no playing time. And then he was at Cardiff, and now he's in Germany. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to give those time to be consistent. And so that was one of the reasons that he didn't jump on the United ship right away. And who knows what would have happened if he had.
Would you like us to bleep Red Star too, or?
That's okay. You can keep it.
But
she got their keeper already, right? She's got what she needs from Red Star.
Exactly. But you talked about how it affected him mentally and all that stuff. But a year later, he does end up going to one of the top 5 leagues in Europe. He ends up at Fiorentina in Italy, and long story short, after, I believe, 7 or 8 years in Italy now, he's made 225 Serie A appearances, so I'm not even counting the Coppa Italia ones. And he's been involved in a goal every 150 minutes, a total of 90 goals with 48 scored by himself and then 42 assisted. That's not bad for a player that is yet to turn 27, already more than 200 Serie A appearances and being involved in as many goals as he has. Can you talk a little bit about those first 3.5 seasons at Fiorentina and how he did there and how he was perceived by the rest of Italy?
I mean, he was really perceived. I remember that as the little Kaká coming in, and this kind of young, exciting player from the Serbian league that could provide good things for the midfield in Fiorentina. And after a while, he signed a 5-year contract, I remember, and that was already a big thing for Partizan, and in that sense. And it took him a while to kind of adapt to his surroundings, let's say, and he wasn't good right away, but then he kind of got into the groove. And then he basically got a friend in Fiorentina, which is what would later be the Serbian national team coach, Sinisa Mihajlovic, who spent a season at Fiorentina. And I think that kind of helped Ljajić settle in the sense that that he kind of got used to his surroundings a bit more. He scored his first goal, and then he kind of got into his groove, got his confidence that he had at Partizan back now in these new surroundings. And that by then it was already 2012. And then we kind of lead to something that marked Ljajic's career off the field. And on the field, he was providing good good performances. He assisted a lot in the beginning before he started scoring. And he did show that creativity, which was the reason that Fiorentina signed him. But by then he was already kind of showing attitude as well, which is Ljajic's career as well. And we come to the big moment that is one of the first things that kind of people remember when they talk about Ljajić is the fact that, so this was in 2012, and at the time the coach of Fiorentina was Delio Rossi, who was kind of like a calm man who had like a lot of experience with other Serie A and Serie B teams and liked by everybody. And so Fiorentina were doing very badly that season, actually. I think they were in the second half of the table, closing in like close to 18th place. I remember it was a big drama. And Fiorentina were playing badly. They were losing 2-0. And Ljajić was nowhere. And he gets substituted in the first half already. It was near the end of the first half. He gets substituted. And he goes off the pitch and claps sarcastically as he passes his own coach. Sits on the bench. And basically what Delio Rossi does is turns around and grabs Ljajić by the neck in that classic Homer Simpson, Bart Simpson move that you see of like one person choking another. That is what happened. It was the Fiorentina coach choking a Fiorentina player and then trying to punch him. And it was madness. It was like complete madness. Nobody knew what was happening. Like the players were trying to like separate their own manager and their own player. And this was like 5 years ago. It wasn't that long ago, 6 years ago. So, I mean, it sounds like some like science fiction almost. But yeah, it happened. And like afterwards, Delio Rossi was like fired right away. As soon as the match was over, he was fired, and like the club kind of supported Ljajić in that sense. And I think Delio Rossi came out saying that on his way off, Ljajić had not just clapped at him sarcastically, but also insulted his family or something like that. And that's why he kind of lunged at him. But then a couple of other players backed Ljajić and said, no way, he didn't do that. We were right there. We saw it. We didn't hear anything. Like, it was a huge drama. That was the first kind of big drama that Ljajić was a part of. But I feel like since then, every club that he's signed for, there's been, and also in the national team with Serbia, there's been sparks of, I don't know if the word would be insolence or petulance or turmoil, but in the sense that he says what he thinks, he acts how he feels, and he's not a very good politician in any sense of the word. And he often kind of has that vibe of a kid that's going to sit in the corner with his arms crossed. If he's mad at you, he's going to show that he's mad at you. And he's done that with, I think, teammates and coaches, and especially I think he has a little bit of an issue with authority in that sense. And it started in Fiorentina that in May, and then it kind of continued on in the national team. So like basically, Ljajić had a very interesting May 2012. And what happened later was that he was called up for the national team, and which he had debuted a couple of years ago. And before that, and basically the coach of the national team was Siniša Mihajlović, who he knew before, who had been his coach for a little bit at Fiorentina before Delio Rossi came in. And basically, Siniša Mihajlović was there to kind of start this new era of Serbian football. Serbia had been qualified for the Euro in 2012, and all sights were set on the World Cup in 2014 in Brazil. And Siniša Mihajlović, who had been such a legendary player and who was also a bit of a character, especially in the Serie A, like he scored the most fantastic free kicks you'll ever see, but then he was also well known for kind of spitting at players. So he was also a character and colorful in every sense of the word. And he was a Red Star legend. So much of the country was like, oh, Siniša Mihajlović is going to come and be our savior. And what Siniša Mihajlović did was kind of make this code of conduct and say that these are the rules that each of my players have to stick to show how we're a unit, how we're a team, because the national team before that had gone through some issues of kind of like, let's say, rival teams and kind of like things like certain players being against certain groups of players. And like this was Mihajlovic's way of showing you that there would be unity this time around. And basically he had each of the players sign a contract saying that they would do all of these things in the code of conduct. And one of the things on there was that everybody would sing the national anthem loudly in all matches that they played. And it was a time when this was kind of forced through the media as well, that Mihajlovic wants to show how everybody's love for Serbia is so big. I remember when you would go to watch the national team, the national anthem, the words to the national anthem were given out on kind of like a piece of paper. Obviously, like everybody knew the words, but it was just kind of a thing to get everybody singing. And and this is just a side note, like Serbia's national anthem has changed throughout the years because of the change in the country. But from when it was Yugoslavia, there was a different national anthem. Then we were Serbia and Montenegro, and the old Yugoslavia national anthem stayed. And so this national anthem was actually in place for not that long. And basically, Ljajić signed the paper saying that he would sing the national anthem. And then in, I think, his first match where he was a starter under Mihajlovic, which was a friendly, he didn't sing it. And then this caused so much outrage from, Mihajlovic, and who basically said that we're not going to have anybody in our camp who's not going to be one of the team, and so on, and basically kicked him out. And this was the part where Ljajić was, some would say, at the peak of his playing career in terms of he had left Partizan. He had found his feet at Fiorentina. He was playing internationally well, and it was time for him to do it in the national team as well. And then Siniša Mihajlovic kicks him out. And the backstory to this is to do kind of with Ljajic's hometown in Serbia and the fact that Ljajić is Muslim and comes from a largely Muslim region of Serbia. So he's from, sorry, that was that noise again.
No problem.
For me. Yeah, so he is from Novi Pazar, which is actually a town that's in a region of Serbia that is largely Muslim and that borders Bosnia and Montenegro, and the region is called Sanjak, and they have a largely Muslim community, and Ljajić is Muslim, as I'm sure has already been talked about in Turkey and upon his arrival to Beşiktaş. And basically Ljajić said at some point during what we call National Anthem Gate, basically, that he had to be true to himself and that he wasn't going to sing the National Anthem because in the National Anthem there were references of a Christian God. And he didn't sing it according to his personal beliefs. And afterwards, Siniša Mihajlovic, the national team coach, kicked him out. And like everybody in Serbia was just stunned by the whole kind of roller coaster ride of that happening, and Siniša Mihajlovic coming in and being there to kind of stabilize things in the national team. And the first thing he does is kick a player out in kind of doing it for the sake of stability, which all of it I think was a bit mad. And I think no good came from kicking Ljajić out of the national team. And to a certain extent, I understand that it was a case of Ljajić saying he would do something, actually signing a paper saying, I will sing the national anthem, and then not singing it. Like, this wasn't a surprise to him. He could have said off the bat, I'm not going to do it, and then see what Mihajlovic could have done. He didn't. He signed it. He, pretended that he was completely fine with it, and then on the pitch he decided that that's how he was kind of show his mark against authority. And Mihajlovic is a person who has a very big ego, and I think that to a certain extent Ljajić does as well. And I think there was a clash there at the very beginning of his campaign as national team manager that just didn't work well, and that kind of negativity stayed with the national team throughout that whole campaign. They didn't qualify for the World Cup in 2014, and basically Ljajić spent 2 years, which were 2 pretty important years, let's say, in a player's development, where he was out of the national team. And later he was called back in, where at the time the interim coach said, I don't care if my players sing the national anthem. Ljajić is back, of course, because he's a good player. And I think there was a quote, I don't know if it was by him or by somebody else at the time, who said, this is not the World Cup and the national team, this is not an after school glee club. This is a football team. We don't care how you sing or what you sing. We just care that you know how to play football.
Yeah.
And so that was a kind of big thing. And the thing of singing the national anthem continues as a discussion in Serbia to this day. And Ljajić to this day does not sing the national anthem. And as soon as they kind of pan in on a player singing or not singing the national anthem, they'll be like, "Oh, we know he's going to be a good player. He's singing so loudly." And I mean that's kind of stayed with it far beyond Siniša Mihajlovic's run as national team coach, where he did nothing. And so basically that all happened in the month of May for Ljajić in 2012, where he got choked and punched by his coach in his club, and then got kicked out of the national team by his manager. So, and then
one question I have to interject there is, at that point, when he's kicked off the national team, is he considered a key player on the pitch?
He's not, no.
Okay.
But he was considered a option in midfield at a time where Serbia isn't the kind of team that has an abundance of players anywhere on the field.
Right.
So you take all the talent that you have, and you don't turn away from a highly creative player at a time when you need highly creative players who are going to score and create goals more than anything for your World Cup campaign. You don't turn your back on a player of that. He wasn't the star of that team
for sure,
by any means, but he could have been important. And the thing is that Serbia didn't qualify for that World Cup because they didn't score enough. And with Ljajić in the team, they might have.
Interesting.
So you never know. And so that was basically it. And not long after, in 2013, in the summer of 2013, Ljajić signed for Roma. And basically, since then, he actually spent a decent amount of time in Roma, since a full 2 years. And he had some good performances there, but again, it was some roller coaster performances. He had one of his best matches playing against Fiorentina, his former coach, and basically then he scored a brace in another important game for Roma when the team was 2-0 down, and then he would have key performances, and then he'd kind of disappear. Like I said, so and that is kind of what when you would talk to Italian journalists about him here, or when I'd mentioned to somebody I'm from Serbia, and like they'd mention Dejan Stankovic, of course, first, and then Mihajlovic, and then some others, and then they'd be like, "Oh, Ljajić," and I was like, "Yeah, Ljajić, he has so much potential, but you never really know what to expect from him." And so basically that's the story that has meant that he's bounced around kind of from club to club in Italy, never really finding his full place and full form in either of them. And I think part of that is also to do with the fact that he's had some sort of clash, some on a large scale, some on a minimal scale, with almost every manager that he's had in Italy. And what's interesting then, to kind of finish off this whole national anthem gate story, is that then Ljajić moved to Torino. And he moved to Torino in 2016, and who else came to Torino in 2016 was Siniša Mihajlovic, who then became Ljajic's coach. And I remember thinking when that happened, just like, wait, has the world gone crazy? Are these two very, very colorful individuals back, like one with another? Like, and they can't. There's no running from it here. You're at the same club. You see each other every day. And then basically they had made up, everything was cleared up, everything was fine. Ljajić gave an interview where he said that Mihajlovic is no doubt the best coach in Italy, and that Torino is prospering so much from having him in there. And for basically the 2 seasons that Mihajlovic was at Torino, and I think the two of them are actually one of a kind, honestly, because Mihajlovic also had a very colorful career, both as a player, like I said, but then also as a coach in Italy, where he would come up and say to reporters like sometimes very rude things, and like very kind of first thing that's on his mind. And in that,
no filter.
Yeah, unfiltered, exactly. And in Torino it worked, because I feel like for the first time Mihajlovic gave Ljajić some of that responsibility to kind of be in control. And he actually played well under the two of them, worked well at a club level, actually, and which goes to show that they might have actually worked well on a national team level as well if they'd been given the chance to, if Mihajlovic had gone past his own ego of silly rules and kind of, but then, we can talk about egos in football another time. I mean, just the example of Spain at this World Cup is a huge one.
Yeah.
And
or even national anthems, right? Like the US there's a huge controversy now with Colin Kaepernick. Anthems are all the rage. So, but we'll do another. That could be another episode, like you said. Sorry.
Honestly, yeah. So I mean, and then when Mihajlovic left Torino, and I feel like a lot of people around the club breathed a secret sigh of relief that such a dramatic manager was finally gone. I think the one person who didn't breathe a sigh of relief was actually Ljajić, because when he left, the new coach didn't give Ljajić half of the playing time that Mihajlovic had. And that's where kind of questions of him possibly leaving Torino came into play. And like he was subbed out a lot of last season and or didn't even start matches. And just basically there was a mental dip and a dip in form in every sense. So I think actually leaving what has become his comfort zone, which was Serie A, it could be good for him. And I think that he'll especially kind of relish the fact to establish himself in a new environment with a new coach and show that he's deserving of first team football. So I think with Ljajić is one of those players that is driven a lot by his mental attitude in the moment. And that drives him to either play really, really well when he feels like he has something to prove, but that can also block him completely on other times, or when for whatever reason he feels unmotivated to play.
Do you feel that he this particular aspect of his personality, do you think that will make him perform in the big matches or the smaller matches? Do you think that an Istanbul derby, like for example his first Istanbul derby, do you think that's going to be something where he's going to really try and put his best game on the pitch?
I think he will. And the question is just whether he manages to achieve it. And I mean, one of the things that he was criticized for in Roma and also a bit in Torino, but especially kind of in Roma, which should have been seen as kind of like the peak of his career, the biggest club he played for, arguably. And basically is that he didn't show up in the big matches. He didn't show up when Juventus came to town. He didn't show up in the Rome derby against Lazio. So the question is, because this is so much of a new environment, will he be even more keen to prove himself? And will an Istanbul derby actually be perfect for his mentality? Could easily be so.
The emotion in the stadium and all that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that just from some of the photos that I've seen of his presentation in the new, I have to say, beautiful Beşiktaş shirt, there was a feeling of contentment on his face. And I think a part of that might also be because he is religious and that he'll find himself feeling kind of at home in Turkey in a way that he wasn't in Italy, which is a highly Catholic country, of course. And so I think that also might be interesting to see how he develops in an environment which in his head he's already decided is a good one for him.
Well, I think this is actually a perfect segue to another question that I think may have been yours initially, Kaan. But how, given all of you've said about his, comfort zone being Italy, and I think I would imagine Serbian fans probably enjoying that he's in one of those top leagues. How is his move to Beşiktaş in the Turkish league being received by Serbian fans? The national team, coach, for that matter,
I have to say that, the timing of his move meant that he was perceived as going to the club that knocked Partizan out of Europe.
Oh.
So that was the kind of the main talk was that you would see across all the papers was that Beşiktaş kicked Partizan out of Europe, and Ljajić is now signing for the team that kicked. Like, not in a negative way, but that was just timing-wise how it was described. So that kind of overshadowed everything else. And at the time, just because, Red Star had made Europe, and not just any Europe, but Champions League, and Partizan hadn't, and so that was still kind of in the minds of many in Serbia.
Sorry, just put that on the record. We're sorry.
Yeah, I'm not gonna accept that apology, but that's okay. It's not really Beşiktaş's fault. I mean, first of all, it was a tough draw for Partizan. Second of all, we're really, really bad this season, like really, really bad. And fine, try and concentrate on winning the league. I mean, they're already behind, but you never know. Maybe Red Star will be so tired from all their Champions League football that they'll underperform.
That's the thing, for sure. And I'll say, you guys were no stroll in the park. You made us bring everything we had in the reserves. So you can take pride in your performance, for sure.
I am happy to hear that, at least. And but yeah, so
nice save, Sinan.
Nice save. So Ljajić's move kind of to Beşiktaş slipped through the cracks of kind of the two big clubs in Serbia and their progress or non-progress in Europe. And then kind of it was easy to associate his move to Partizan being kicked out, especially because he was a former Partizan player.
Sure.
But I have to say, I feel that ever since that drama with the national anthem, fans in Serbia have been a little bit lukewarm towards Ljajić, but not just lukewarm in the sense that, he didn't sing the national anthem, he's not really Serbian. And he's come out many times and said, I love Serbia, I love playing for the national team, I'm 100% committed, this is just a personal thing of mine. But it was just, I feel like, an overexposure to a certain player and to a certain storyline that, like, everybody in Serbia continues to be lukewarm towards Ljajić as a player completely. Like, nobody really takes much, I don't want to say notice of what he does, but just in the sense that there's not that much drama about a move that he would make if it isn't a move to a bigger club than in a, like, if he signed for Juventus, it would be a big deal. But other than that, I feel like Ljajić maybe doesn't get the attention his level of potential and quality deserves, just because he was overexposed in the media a while ago.
Yeah, media saturation.
Exactly.
That's too bad.
And how are the Torino fans responding to this? Because I've heard that they're apparently not too happy about the transfer, especially the transfer fee, the potential future transfer fee has not been confirmed anywhere. But in Turkey, they're saying that it's and usually, Turkish reporting isn't the best. But when it comes to financials, it's usually pretty accurate.
That's when they get serious. Yeah.
That's where they actually have a decent track record. And in Turkey right now, it's being said $1.25 million loan fee with an obligation to buy. No specifics on the obligation, but in Italy they said if he plays at least 45 minutes in 20 official games, Beşiktaş will be obligated to buy him. And the supposed transfer fee, according to the reports in Turkey, is only 6.5 million euros, which honestly it baffled me, it stunned me. I admitted 1 or 2 episodes ago to Sinan and on the podcast that I didn't think that he was a realistic target for us, and I had earlier dismissed it because I imagined his transfer fee would be way too high for us, his future transfer fee. But 6.5 million, that's like a steal for a player in the prime of his career, yet to turn 27.
And fine, 7 3/4, right, with the loan fee.
Yeah, and I mean he's still. 27 years old almost, Serbian international, more than 200 Serie A appearances, involved in a bunch of goals in Serie A. And inconsistent or not, I think, if he was a consistent player, he'd never be coming to Turkey in the first place.
Yeah.
But how is that being received in Italy, his move away for such a low fee?
I mean, I think a lot of fans aren't happy about it, like you said, but I also think it's a case of that he obviously didn't have the trust of this coach, which is Mazzari. Walter Mazzari is the current coach of Torino, and he just didn't give Ljajić the time of day or the time to kind of prove himself on the pitch. And I don't know if there was kind of some internal clash there, but basically when talks of him moving, and there have been rumors of him moving for a while now, it wasn't just kind of Beşiktaş, but even before that. And I think the words that kind of stuck with me from Mazzari was that Ljajić is free to go. A club, if a club want to buy him, they can have him. And when a coach says something like that, it kind of sticks with you. Mm-hmm. That the coach would openly say that. And I remember Ljajić saying, I don't want to go, saying, like, especially to the fans, like, I want to stay here, I feel comfortable here, I don't want to go, but it's up to the club. And then the club saying, well, it's up to the player, like, he's the one who chose to leave. So what's the real story there? I don't know, but I do know that I feel like there's a little bit of a missed parallel between the coach and what the fans want in terms of, I think the fans wanted him to stay.
But I mean, he made 63 appearances in 2 years for Torino, and I did the math. He was involved in 43 goals and 63 appearances. I mean, inconsistent or not, that's
those
silly.
are great stats. Those are great stats.
We can use him.
He had, he basically assisted very, very well again in Torino, and it's just a question of why there was never really a coach that gave full confidence to him. That's kind of like, Ljajić has always been a kind of like an open question mark for me in that sense.
Mm-hmm. But is he like a little bit of a, I'll call it a stat patter, where he gets a bunch of his assists from corners and free kicks, or most of his assists from open play, or because I think that's an important thing, because you know those numbers are impressive, but it's unlikely, especially in the beginning, that he'll be taking a lot of corners and indirect free kicks at Beşiktaş. So. Where do you think that he? That's a difficult question, I know, if you don't watch Torino week in, week out, but
which I don't, unfortunately. Yeah. So I can't give you all the details. I know that he did take corners, and so that some goals came from there, but I can't really give you a full answer in terms of percentages or how many came from open play and how many didn't come from open play. I know that, like, when you would talk about Ljajić in Torino terms, it'll be like, oh, he creates a lot of goals.
Yeah, I saw actually he created on average, I think, 2.5 chances per match last season, which is quite impressive. It's something that you also saw in the national team when he came on for Serbia on that left wing. He coupled with Milinković-Savić and with Dusan Tadić, who is now doing fantastically well in Ajax this season. Like, he created a lot of chances. 3 of them kind of formed an attacking triangle that helped boost the creativity of the team to no end. So he does create chances, and it's not fake stats in that sense. That he really does provide. It's like he's a nuisance for defenses. That's the right word. He kind of slips through lines very quickly and runs at defenders, and is quick to kind of pass the ball when he in the perfect moment. So that's, I think, where a lot of that comes from.
Sounds good.
And actually, quickly, just took a look at who scored, and from the 42 assists that they have recorded, I think he got 5 from. He got 7 from a free kick, and another 3 from a corner. So actually, it looks like it's quite a bit of assists from open play. So
that's what I would have thought, because he's not a master free kick taker, and his corners are okay, but I know that Torino isn't a team that scores that many from set pieces anyway. So I would say that a lot of them do come from open play in that sense. That's because that's where his main creativity comes from.
Perfect.
Yeah. Sorry, I have muted myself for a second there. No, but that's actually something that Beşiktaş lack, I think. Especially creativity from open play is really something they desperately need. And it won't solve all the problems right now, because there's a little bit of an issue in that midfield altogether. I think the coach really has to find a solution there. But
well, it'll be nice to see Ozan in his position again, though. Maybe.
Yeah, but whether Medel can be that holding midfielder, it's a big question.
And Atiba may be out for a while too. So anyway.
Yeah. But how is he perceived in general in Serbia? Not just the move now, but you already said that people are a little bit lukewarm about him. But is he seen as one of the potential stars of this Serbian national team? You know, you talked about Dusan Tadic, who's doing great right now at Ajax. Of course, there's Milinkovic Savic, who right now one of the hottest commodities, I think, in football today, especially one of those very hot targets on the transfer market. The gossips are all about him. We're all about him all summer. So he's obviously, you know, the big star, I guess. And Dusan Tadic, I guess he has a certain status as well. But is Ljajić perceived as one of the influential players for the national team, or is he still kind of in that role of he can do the job in midfield, but not really at that level?
Maybe peripheral. Is he still peripheral?
Yeah.
To be honest, I think he is still in that referral phase. Like, he's still the player that I think is seen as somebody who could come on, for example, and make a difference, but not the one who'd be given the confidence to do it from the very start of the match or for the entire match. Or the thing is that, I mean, like you said, Milinkovic Savic is now the main player in midfield. That gets all the focus, and with him, Tadic, of course. And then there's a question of whether on that left wing you would put Ljajić or you would put Filip Kostic, who had a kind of mixed season last year in Hamburg, who got relegated for the first time and who's now moved to Frankfurt. And it's a question of basically how both their seasons go to see who's going to get that starting left wing position. What the coach is doing is kind of giving chances to younger players. That is mostly in defense, actually. But I think it will also kind of dictate how the whole team is perceived. Mm-hmm. And I think that Ljajić still, I don't know if still is the right word because he's not that, young anymore. But which is so sad to say for somebody who's only 27. But basically, he doesn't still have that role of leader on the pitch in the midfield, and that would go down to Nemanja Matic mostly, who's of course defensive midfield, but who has that leadership role in the team. And then the star would be Milinkovic Savic, would be Aleksandar Mitrovic, who's having an explosive season in that number 9 position in Fulham at the moment in the Premier League. And then that creative role, actually, from what I saw at the World Cup, I really liked how kind of he fed off Milinkovic Savic, how the two of them fed off of each other, especially paired with Tadic on the right wing. And so it was a question of Filip Kostic, who provides speed, or Ljajić, who kind of leaves that wing position and switches around with Milinkovic Savic around that number 10, where they both kind of float around that midfield. So it's a question of creativity versus speed for Serbia in that position. But the general perception is that he's not a star of the team, no.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. But then again, if he has a fantastic season at Beşiktaş, then perceptions might change. That's why they're there, right?
For sure.
Well, for sure.
By all means, I'm sure everybody in Serbia would be thrilled for kind of Ljajić to step up and be that surprise in midfield.
If we look at Tosic before and after, the perception of him.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we have a good record with Serbia.
Spoke about that last time. So hopefully Beşiktaş can mean the same thing for Adem Ljajić. Sorry. Go ahead. Okay.
Go ahead.
You spent time with the national team and all that stuff. Did you notice something about him, like in regards to what type of people did he prefer to hang out with, which of his teammates and all that kind of stuff? And do you have anything fun to tell us about your time in Russia in regards to Ljajić?
So, it was very clear there were groups of players that hung out, but mostly it was kind of like everybody hanging out in one big group. But then Ljajić actually was one who had a clear BFF in the national team. And that was goalkeeper Vladimir Stojkovic of Partizan, who I had that funny story about last time when we talked about about the club and about their duel with Beşiktaş. So it was the two of them. It was always Stojkovic and Ljajić who would be going out for walks together, romantic walks on the beach next to in Serbia's base camp, or who would be the ones playing video games or doing something else while the others were playing video games. So like it was clearly the two of them that got each other on let's say some level. So I found it actually really interesting that it was the two of them who were such good friends, who are both kind of, let's say, very specific characters, very colorful characters. So I actually found that it worked well. Like it wouldn't be a pairing that would come to my mind first, but when it did happen, I was like, yeah, it would make sense that the two of them would be hanging out.
They're both wacky.
Yeah, exactly.
And do you think that Ljajić spoke to Tosic at all? Dusko Tosic, I mean, of course, not Zoran Tosic, before his move? Do you think that played a role, perhaps, in his decision?
I think it might have. I mean, Tosic is known for having a big love for Beşiktaş and for all things Turkey. And I know that now that he's in China, like there have been posts on his social media of him going to Turkish restaurants and like things like that. And even a photo that he posted just recently of that I actually wanted to send to you, Kaan. It was a photo that he posted of his family flying off somewhere, I think, for this. Because he wasn't called up for the national team because the Serbian national team coach is kind of trying to focus on younger players at the moment.
Experimenting
in these Nations League matches, and so Tosic has some time off now. And basically, there was a photo of him on the plane with his wife and kids, and he had a Beşiktaş charger for his phone. I found that really funny.
Yeah, I saw that.
An extra battery pack. And so basically, I know that Tosic is a very private player. That he's not very talkative, and I think that him and Ljajić have very different personalities. So I'm not sure how close they actually were. From everything that I saw, they weren't that close in Russia. But I feel like it would be completely logical that they exchange a phone call or two for kind of like from Tosic's side to help maybe Ljajić make up his mind, to help him settle in after the contract was signed. So I feel like they probably had a chat about come to Beşiktaş.
Nice. If only it were recorded. We could have done this this time, Kaan. We could have continued it. Hey, amigo.
Like, Ljajić, I left my locker for you or something.
By the way, all of Kaan's accents are the same, like regardless. I just wanted to note that.
Regardless of which country.
I'm great in accents. What are you talking about? I bet you can't even tell I'm from Belgium.
Like that was totally like. Anyway, I don't want to harp on you. That was fine, Kaan. That was great.
That was fine. That was a great accent. Sounded super Serbian.
But yeah,
it was like maybe like in GTA. Did speak a little bit, in GTA 4, there aren't those. That's a Balkan accent, right? I don't know if they're from Serbia.
The dude's probably Americanized, maybe. Man. He's a New Yorker like me, I think.
Yeah, Nico Bellic.
Nico.
Yeah. I don't understand how he would say his own name is Bellic though. That doesn't make any sense.
That's what that's very Americanized.
Should totally should be Bellic, right?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in the U.S. and basically how I pronounced my last name there was Nikcevic.
Yeah.
I just went with it. I didn't want to go through, especially as a kid, you don't want to go around correcting people or forcing them to say Nikcevic in a world where people don't.
Yeah, I was that kid because everyone always used to call me Bayazit. I was like, no, it's Bayazit. It's with an A, not an E.
My name alone, just my first name, Sinan, confused like every teacher. Well, because they're looking for like Simon. So they literally say like Simon or and then it'd be like Sinan.
Yeah. Don't talk to me about that. Like my name's Sonja with a J.
Oh,
and
Sonja.
I was Sonja everywhere in the U.S. And for them, I did correct it. So I had enough trouble with my first name that I just gave up on the last name completely.
I was
like, if you can pronounce Sonja, you can do whatever you want with my last name.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that pretty much covers it for the Ljajić. I'm out of questions.
Yeah.
Kaan, do you have any follow-up?
I did, but I completely forgot.
You spaced on it. Well, fair enough.
We covered quite a lot.
I think so, yeah.
We did.
for sure.
I think we covered everything that we had on our list, really, but I had something that popped up in my head that I just can't manage to think of right now, unfortunately. I'm getting older, you know.
It happens.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But no, I think this is another, home run.
Good.
Home run
Sonia,
episode.
thank you for your
Yes,
for your
great.
participation once again.
Thank you. I hope I didn't disappoint all the comeback listeners.
No, really.
And
No, we got all the input too, I think. I mean, that's the goal.
Well,
good.
Just one more thing. How do you think? What will it take? You think for him to be relatively consistently successful at Beşiktaş?
Atmosphere.
Oh, good.
Atmosphere,
Then we
do you
got
think
that.
that's feeling the love from the fans? Is that something that's going to motivate?
No,
him?
I mean atmosphere in the team. Atmosphere with just like how the inner workings of the team are, how the team gels with the coach, how he personally gels with the coach, and I think like it's all about how that works for him, how his perception of his surroundings are. So
Out of what languages does he speak? Sorry, I totally just interrupted.
no worries. He's I think the one in the national team who doesn't speak English.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah, as from what I saw in Russia, he's one of the rare ones who doesn't speak English. He speaks Italian and he speaks Serbian, obviously.
Sure.
And yeah, I think his English is not that high from what I saw in Russia.
That explains why he did his first interview the other day in Italian, actually. The pre-match interview, it was in Italian. So I was actually expecting him to, do his best Nico Bellic imitation, but it turned out to be some Italian.
Yeah.
Did that sound the same to you now?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm being totally stereotypical right now.
But also, it's literally like the same accent, but you're like saying it.
Amazing.
It's so good.
Okay. Well, actually, Sonja will probably be able to do a great Italian accent because
I'm actually really bad at accents as well. I think all my accents end up sounding Indian for some reason.
Oh, nice. All right. You mentioned The Simpsons. Maybe it's like the Apu. You got the Apu.
Yeah, it's probably like every accent of mine is the Apu.
That's how do you call that? A precursor for what's to come in my outro. I'm totally going to use. Okay.
Okay. Well, anyway, it was really great to talk to you guys, and I hope that I get invited for my third time on the pod at the end of the season or something like that to talk about Ljajić's best ever season in his career. So
yeah, or maybe if your beloved Red Star ends up third in their group and goes to the Europa League and we play them or something and knock them out of Europe.
But then we're on the same
know.
team. At least in that case, if you're previewing that,
we'll be on the
same
team.
side.
It'll be Go Beşiktaş.
Exactly.
I think they got a pretty difficult group though, didn't they?
They got a really fiery group. They got Napoli. So like Red Star Napoli is going to be intense everywhere. That's going to be madness. Lots of things will be set on fire. Then there's Liverpool.
Oof.
And PSG.
Oh.
So fun group, right?
I think that's gonna be
third would be a feat, honestly.
Yes.
Honestly, third would be a
getting
feat.
a point
if either of those three clubs don't make it to Europe, that would be huge. Because of Red Star, that would be huge.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think they're just gonna go for pride and
hope not to get beat.
Hope they don't end on 0, but that might. But let's go into.
Yeah, let's wrap it up then, like officially, huh? But yeah, take us out, Kaan, or wrap up the interview.
Well, Sonja, thank you very much again for joining us, for being our first recurring guest, which automatically makes you the most featured person on this podcast besides Sinan and I. So, that's a great feat for you.
That's right.
That is a great honor, honestly. Like, if you guys ever need a third co-host, apparently I'm ready for the job.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
you know a lot about Beşiktaş now, too.
Exactly. I know so much about Beşiktaş. So, no, really, I hope I end up being called up for a third time on the pod to talk about Ljajić's amazing season at the end of the season at Beşiktaş. Who knows?
Fingers crossed for sure. Sonja, do you have any social media that you'd like to plug? Please take this time.
Yeah, plug.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or any project for that matter.
Yeah, well, social media for sure. I mean, you can follow me at Sonja Nick 13, SONJANIK, and 13 on Twitter. And I'm all around on Instagram as well as Sonja. So feel free to follow me there, and we'll have tons of chats about football, both relevant and irrelevant.
Well, Sonja Nikcevic, everyone. How about that? Our first recurring guest, Sinan. I think it was another great interview we had there.
We knocked another one out of the park.
Exactly.
Today.
And your second interview. You know, you're getting the hang of this. But might maybe take a little bit of time. Maybe apologize to the people in the first 45 minutes or so. There might be some. Technical difficulties there with the connection, and it wasn't really Sonja's or our connection, but Skype, which we used to record, lifting the curtain there a little bit.
The fourth wall.
Sometimes it just we had the same problem with the recording with John Townsend a couple last week or so when we were talking about Loris Karius, and it seems as soon as we add a third person to the conversation, we start getting these little hiccups with the connection, and even though we all of us have really good fast internet connections. So I don't really understand what the problem there is, but unfortunately that might be a little bit of an issue in the first part of the episode, but I think resolved it after the middle point or so, and I hope it sounds better for you. But as always, people, please take a look in the description of this podcast. All the social media plugs are in there, the Twitter handles and all that kind of stuff. Make sure that you listen to our hashtag After the Beep segment today as well, because we have two very special messages from some people who have seen Adem Ljajić in plenty of action in the Serie A, and I'm sure you'll be interested in hearing what they have to say. Sinan, please take us out. Unless you have anything more to add, of course.
Go Beşiktaş. And for the sake of diplomacy, go Partizan as well.
Go Partizan.
For our guests.
Exactly. Thank you very much for that. Go Partizan. Go Beşiktaş.
Now we can say that fully without any conflict.
Exactly. Now I
Yeah, exactly.
That's very true. Well, thanks Sonja for another great interview. I hope it'll be just as well or even better received than the previous one.
I think it could go even further in this case. Now it's good. The added, the Ljajić stuff.
I thought you were going to say
in fact, Ljajić has the star power.
Hello, Black Eagles podcast. My name's Kirsten Schlewitz, and I like to think of myself as the president of the Adem Ljajić fan club. I just wanted to say that I think your team is so lucky for getting him. I've been following him since he was 19 or 20 when he came to Fiorentina, and I loved watching him then because he had a lot of room to run and to play and to be a little more creative than he's been in other roles. So I confess I don't know a lot about your team, and I'm even afraid to pronounce it. But if your coach knows how to use him right, if he knows to let him roam the pitch a little bit, if he knows to indulge him a little, because he does need a little indulging, then I think you'll see some great things from Ljajić, and that he'll be fun to watch, and that he'll help get you up in the Super League. I don't know about winning, but if you could knock Gala off the top, that'd be lovely. Anyway, enjoy. I'll be watching. Ciao.
Hi Black Eagles, here it's Bruno Bottaro from Istanbul, and my take on Adem Ljajić would surely be influenced from the things I saw when I saw him live playing for Inter, I would say also for Fiorentina and Torino. He has been an amazing player in Serie A, always one that is worth playing the ticket for. But at the same time, he has not always been perfectly constant in his performances, because he is the kind of player that adds creativity, flair, and unpredictability also. But sometimes he was like not perfectly on the pitch. This kind of happens with Oğuzhan Özyakup sometimes for Beşiktaş. So if both will not be in their like best mood, this will not be good news for Beşiktaş. But at the same time, I believe that Şenol Güneş, the Beşiktaş environment, will play their part in bringing Ljajić to his best performance level. They can do that. They did that with Talisca, they did that with Quaresma, they did that with so many players that were thought as not perfectly constant in their performances. So I believe that that's a great take from Beşiktaş. And considering the context, the extremely deep need that Beşiktaş had for a number 10, he can play in that position. He plays also like wide left. Sometimes he's a great take, in my opinion. And most of all, is very interesting to see if he was gonna fit in Talisca's shoes, because that's why he was bought by Beşiktaş. And that's up to Şenol Güneş. I really trust him. I really trust also the staff of Beşiktaş. They worked really well in the last seasons. So I'm looking forward to seeing Ljajić on the pitch with a Beşiktaş shirt, because with Inter he didn't have the chance to play so much. But with Fiorentina and Torino, where he was at the center of the project, he always had the chance to be loved by the fans. And by the way, regarding this last point, Torino fans at the moment are not really happy from an Italian point of view, of course, because they kind of expected him to stay. He said 1 week ago that he wanted to stay, but he was already in talks with Beşiktaş, we believe. So they were not happy with his agents, with his managers that on Instagram were posting continuously negotiations with Beşiktaş. And so it happened also with Fiorentina. Ljajić didn't leave really in the best way. So this is this kind of thing that could also happen in the future with Beşiktaş. Ljajić is not a player that stays for long in the same team. He changes usually after 1 or 2 seasons. So to Beşiktaş fans, I would say be ready for an amazing player, especially in the first season. He can do great things, but at the same time, don't expect him to be at Beşiktaş for the whole life. But Beşiktaş fans, I think that they are used to this kind of thing, because it also happened with Mario Gomez, with Anderson Talisca, and with other players. And Black Eagles love the players, even if they are just Kiralık Katil, like assassins on a leaf. Just for 1 season, just for 2 seasons, it doesn't matter sometimes. So maybe Ljajić can be that kind of player also for Beşiktaş. That's my opinion, of course. Bye, Black Eagles, and let's hear soon, maybe, for Europa League games and for other transfers.
Beşiktaş International hopes you enjoyed this program.